My name is Sage, and this week I had a bad case of art block, but I decided that that was not going to stop me. So instead of big, I was going to start small. So I got the idea to start with wanting to do all the details first. And what I knew was that I wanted to make some stairs with some fake snow and make some small skulls, bones, and potions. I still had no clue what I wanted my focal point to be. All I knew was that the art block monster was not going to stop me this week. And so I began on my quest to make some stairs. And first, I'm going to need a base and some tinfoil. But I also don't need the wooden base because I end up not using it because I'm indecisive. But you'll see that later on. Anyway, with the tinfoil, I fold it in half before then folding the sides in to make it smaller. At this point, I'm just winging it. I have no game plan. I think I'm making the base for the stairs at this point because I wanted them to emerge from the wooden base, but turns out future me had different plans. Then I get some more tinfoil to start on making the stairs, and to do that, I softly fold tinfoil onto itself before then folding the sides down. So now it looks like a half of a rectangle. And I repeat this process once more. The only difference is that this stair is a bit taller. Next, I'm going to fill in the middle parts so that they become two solid slabs of tinfoil. Because later on, I'm going to be putting on the bones, skulls, and potion bottles on the stairs, so I want them to be sturdy. In order to fill them in, I rip off more tinfoil and fold it up before hot gluing them to the pieces that I already made, until they look like this. Now that they are both sturdy, I can now adhere them together. I also use the hot glue gun to adhere them together as well, and once that's done, I move on to making the base of the platform. First, I fold a skinny piece of tinfoil to make the riser before then gluing it in place. Next, I scrunch up pieces of tinfoil and hot glue them onto the back of the stairs before then hot gluing the top platform on. And this is the plans future me had to make it the stair platform. Next, I fold a piece of tinfoil into a small rectangle to make the side of the platform. Then I hot glue it on. I then repeat this process on the other side, but I make it longer so it can cover the majority of the back as well. And since there's a little spot that isn't covered in the back, I repeat this process one more time until everything is covered before then moving on to the next step, which is to take a popsicle stick and smooth out the stairs. They don't have to be perfectly smooth as I want a rocky texture, but I do want it a bit smoother than what it is now. And since I flattened it a bit too much, I added another piece of tinfoil before I am happy with the stairs, and it looks like this. And this is where I get the idea that I want to make a deer-like creature at the top of the stairs. Or at least, that's what I tell myself. So I begin to make a deer-like shape with some tinfoil. Oh, and also don't mind the clay in the background. I thought I'd be using it soon, but well, you'll see. Then I cut some wire to make the antlers of my deer-like creature. Next, I poke the wire through the top of its head and begin to bend the wire in a twisty shape, just to make it more interesting. Next, I bulk up the body by wrapping it in more tinfoil to keep the antlers in place. Then I wrap it in another piece of tinfoil to balance everything out. Next, I cut some more wire to make a front leg for the creature. I bend it to the size that I want before then making another one. I then make the back legs, and I make them the exact same way I did the front, except I give them a little bit more of oomph. I then hot glue each one on. So now that her legs are on, and I did decide the creature is a her, and her name is Sadie. I then got the brilliant idea to add two spooky trees at the top of the platform so that the deer-like creature can be emerging from it. So to do that, I make two trees out of tinfoil and use hot glue to adhere them until eventually they look like this. And now it's clay time. I start by covering my deer-like creature with a layer of clay. I end up making her hoofs more like boots, otherwise she wouldn't stand up because of the weight, which then got me thinking she kind of looks like a wolf but also kind of like a goat and a deer. So I decided that I'm gonna make her a snowy mythical creature. Which mythical creature, you ask? I do not know. All I know is that I named her Sadie, and that's good enough for me. I then start adding in the details, like two small extra horns, making the face a lot more skull-like, by adding more of a bone texture to it, and making it seem like it's protruding from the face, as well as giving her some skull-like teeth, giving the horns more of a bone-like texture. I also put bones sticking out of her legs, but in a cool fantasy creature way. And this is her once I'm done. I then put her in the oven to bake. I then move on to making some mini clay candles. I know they weren't on the list of things that I wanted to make, but once I saw Sadie's end product, I just thought she would like some. So I ended up making two of them. The hardest part was the tiny little details, from the candles themselves to the wicks. But I will say, it was definitely super fun to make them. And this is the end product of one of them. Next, I then move on to making some tiny potion bottles. I just roll a little ball and then attach a small cylinder before then adding a smaller ball on top. I then make another one off screen. I then begin to make a tiny skull. I put clay over tin foil before then adding 2 small eye holes and a nose hole, before then adding 3 small blobs on the bottom for the teeth. I then refine the details more and more until I get to this, and I make 3 in total. Next, I roll a tiny hot dog shape before then making 4 spheres and attaching them on both ends. I then etch into it to give it some texture, and voila, it's a bone, and I also make another one off screen. And now that all the tiny little details are done, it's now time to pop them all in the oven. So I do that, and then I move on to paper mache. The reason why mine is green is because I put food dye in it so it's easier to see on camera. Otherwise, it's just a normal half water, half flour mixture with a couple tablespoons of salt. This took me around 4 hours to completely cover this entire piece, and it took a day and a half to completely dry in all the nooks and crannies. And this is what it looked like before I left it to dry for a day and a half. And while that is drying, Sadie, the skulls, candles, potions, and bones are now ready to paint. I start by painting Sadie black where I think her fur is, and then I go over these parts twice before then setting her aside to dry. Next, I begin to paint the potion bottles purple. I just think purple is a magical color, so I went with it. I also paint them twice before then painting the little ball on top a light purple. I then set them aside to dry. Next, I paint the candles orange. I just like purple and orange together, so I decided to go with that. I also painted them with 2 layers of orange. I then paint the little plate that they're on a yellowy color. I just felt like yellow was the vibe, so I went with it. I then move on to painting the bones yellow to make them look like they've been sitting out for a while, you know, kind of like scary. I then go over the skulls with the same yellow color before then painting their eyes and nose holes black. Next, I go back to the potion bottles and add in some details. I add in pink labels with a blue outline just to really spruce them up. I then set them back down to dry before then moving back to Sadie. And this time, I'm going to be painting her horns, skull, and bones white. I then paint in between her bones and fur blue. I originally painted them red, but I decided Sadie is a winter creature who probably has winter powers, so she needs some blue. I then do the final touches on the candles by painting the wicks black and going over the orange with a mix of white and orange paint for depth. And now it's finally a day and a half later and I can paint the paper mache. I start by painting the stone stairs gray. I am mixing the gray myself, which ends up working great because the different colors are giving the stone look a lot more dimension, until it finally looks like this. And I am so excited to put the fake snow on this, but first, I gotta paint the trees. I start by painting one of the trees an umber brown color. I'm not too concerned with getting every nook and cranny, just because this is the first layer and I will be adding more colors later on. I then do the same thing on the other side. So now they both look like this. I then go over the tree with a paint called raw sienna before then mixing it with buff titanium to brush over the tree to give it some depth. And this is what it looks like once it's all painted. I then do the same thing to the other one. So now that everything is painted, it is now time to glue everything down. But first, we need fake snow. And I got this fake snow from the dollar store. Not sponsored. I would suggest ripping it unless you have fabric scissors because otherwise you're going to be sitting there for a while trying to cut it. I also found twirling it gives it more of a fluffy yet uniformed look, which is perfect for this. And here I am placing the fake snow pieces to see if I like it before then gluing everything down. I then begin hot gluing all of the fake snow. I start on one tree before finishing the rest off camera. I will say this though, the hot glue and fake snow grabs to one another perfectly, so you gotta make sure you get your placements right if you want to do this too. Next, I hot glue the fake snow on the stone stairs as well. I make sure to leave some of the sides with less snow so the candles can go there because they would be warm and melted. At least, they would in my mind. And last but not least, I hot glue the candles, potions, and bones. I would like to say thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow me on any other platforms, my links are below. And now, it's time for the glamour shots.